What's up? Turn this music down.
What up, Doe?
This is, what up, Doe?
We're talking
That's
about
Detroit slang.
Yeah, where that came from, I wonder.
Yeah.
I still wonder.
Yeah, inquiring minds will never know.
I'm gonna Google it.
So 104 podcast back at y'all. Today is it's fourth quarter, 22.
We're still 102 podcast.
That's what I said. I said 102. I
We'll
don't
check
know
on
where
the
you got the four
rewind.
from, but anyway. So yeah, we're back at y'all with some more content. We need subscribers, so we're building up this thing. Here's our trajectory. We're building this show. We're gonna figure it out as we go. And the cool thing about that is, if you continue to show up without any preparation, you're just gonna get better. And so we're just gonna continue to show up. And
I feel we've been preparing for
Yeah.
this for a long time.
Yeah, we've been preparing as far as just content, just dialogue. That should be something that people should hear about. But as far as figuring out how to do podcasts, there's no real strategy here other than good content. And so we'll show up and continue to give you guys our perspective, which we think that people can benefit from, and see where it goes from there. So, you want to talk about today?
You're the content genius. I'm Davita, this is Rex. 102 podcasts. We're talking about nuclearpreneurship.
Yeah, nuclearpreneurship is a coined phrase. It means nuclear means family, nuclear family, which now is also called like a traditional family that consists of a mom, dad, children, all of the same family biologically. It's more of a foreign concept in the Black community now because there's more divorces or non-marriages by Black adults than it is marriages that stay together. So that's why I say it's more of a foreign term. It's more known in other societies, other nationalities, we call them communities. So white communities stay married longer than us, and all the other ones fall after that, right? There's white community, which stays married a little bit longer than us by stats, and then everybody else stays married significantly longer. They totally buy into marriage, and they stay married till they die. Entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship, which basically is starting your own business and making it to where it's a scalable, a transferable business. That's what entrepreneurship is. And so I'm taking the two words, nuclearpreneur, and we turn it into a phrase, a mindset, a concept to sell to the masses in the Black community so that we can have cohesiveness, staying power, loyalty. We want it to mean something of integrity. I always talk about feelings versus principles and where we get off. You ever had like an undisciplined or a person, like a teacher, or maybe a parent, or somebody who was an adult in your life and they gave you no structure. They let you do whatever the fuck you want to do. And when you don't have a structure growing up, you do whatever you want to do, which may not be good for you. But then you might have somebody who gives you strict guidelines and tell you what you can do and what you can't do. And because of that, you typically respect them. You remember people like that. Whereas people that let you do whatever you want to do and let you go off rail and get yourself into trouble, those are people you like, they should have been harder on them. So basically the nuclearpreneur concept is principles versus just go by feelings, right? And I think that what would be useful in the Black community is we have these things that we live by, like the Bible tries to set forth, these guidelines like follow Jesus, what would Jesus do? These are great concepts, but we don't always do that as a whole. As a collective Black community, we don't always do that. But I see other communities having principles, and they could be Christians too, and they follow closer to the way Jesus lived his life, whereas we don't. So it's like emotions versus principles. So the nuclearpreneur mindset is just having these guidelines, which we'll get into more as more things come out. But it's a way in which we can live our lives so we come together in love and peace. We figure out ways to stay together And I'm gonna use things like our history. Our history says that we've been oppressed, we've been all these, we just leave it at oppressed. We've been an oppressed people, leave it right there. We've both been oppressed, black men, black women, black community. So why are we so separated? You know, it seemed like oppression should bring people together. And other communities that have been oppressed, like the Jews, and a number of other classes of people in history, they use that as an excuse to be cohesive. They come together and they bring all their resources together and they live by these rules, and it works. Economically it works, and they have businesses to give to their children and this, that, and the other. Whereas in our community, our oppression has made us go like this. And I got some ideas on how it happened or why we don't come together. But the nuclearpreneur mindset is a cohesiveness. It's a reason to stay together. And it's just building. What is building? You can build a job, you can build a household, you can build a family, you can build a business, you can build a community. So it's all about building better together. And that's what we're out here to do. And I think that by and large, we all want this. You can hear semblances of the black community saying, well, why can't we get along? We all got these egos, and I'm a boss over here, I'm a this over that, over there. And that's the reason why we can't get along, because we don't think of ourselves as being oppressed people that should be edifying and work together. Outside of what's happened to us by another black person, we gotta shed all that shit and say what's good for the group. And I believe that we'll do more for a group than ourselves anyway. So we have to have a collective glue, a nuclearpreneurship. That whole mindset is a collective glue for us to all buy into, therefore start gravitating towards each other. And we get together and we say, okay, we're gonna make this work in our own community, our own span of control. Then you can start figuring out solutions within that community. And that's how we can start to build. We can't build separated from each other. We can't build in courts trying to sue each other. We can't build that way. It just doesn't work, and no one's gonna come in and mediate black people, because by and large, I think that all groups outside of us benefit from us being separated. I mean, economically, when we're not together, we spend more money separate. We're not together, then we don't have any power to start pulling our money together for bigger purposes. So only one that benefits from us being together is us. Therefore, no one's coming to save us, to help us be together.
Nuclearpreneurship, the end game. So I would argue that by and large, we're familiar with how we got here. So in the here, your contention is that we are fragmented, separated, working against each other, that there's exterior forces at play stirring our pot to keep us this way. So the idea of the nuclearpreneur concept is the end game. This is, here's our past, we understand that. We're going to be introducing these dynamics that occurred in previous generations that bring us to here. To define here is we're behind in so many areas that matter in society, right? Wealth being one of them, nuclear families being another, right? Dominating industries is another, which is related to wealth. So we know what here looks like. And what we're painting a picture of in the nuclearpreneur movement, it's a mindset and a movement that we build better together. That we're painting the picture of what the future can look like. And to get from here to there, we're gonna introduce topics, ideas related to relationships, related to business, and everything in between. The dynamic that makes nuclearpreneurship possible is what we're here to discuss. So I appreciate that we celebrate our history. We know that these wrongs need to be righted. You know, reparations is not a new concept. There's all of this dialogue around the what and the how we got here. I think we can all agree how we got here. Now, to take a deeper dive is what the nuclear part to me means. Taking a deeper dive into relationship development, relationship maturity. And you talked about emotions versus principle. I think I want to stay on that lane a little bit, because this is really the glue inside the nuclearpreneurship concept. What the mindset is, understanding relationship dynamics and understanding the relationship between emotions and principles, you know, the greater good versus self good, right? So I want to stay in that dialogue. We talked so much offline, which is what prompted this whole podcast and this dialogue to say we cannot be the only ones having these conversations about emotional maturity. There's so much that has come to light with mental health and a lot of people talking about it, but the nuclearpreneurship picture of what can be really helps us to understand why it's so important to get this right, to get it right now, and putting it in the context of building better together. And yes, it starts in the most setback community, the most, you know, disadvantaged community, I would say. And we have statistics, there's history to prove we're behind the Black community. So using the Black community as an example of what, you know, what we're talking about, this is what this is, but it really applies to all communities. And other communities, like you said, are already ahead of us. So how do we catch up? How do we catch up, close the gap between us and other communities in developing this future nuclearpreneurship vision that you have? And I want to start the dialogue with emotions versus principles.
Yeah. So the nucleus of it is to be able to supplant a wavelength over the entire concept, and to understand that anything without structure can never be cohesive. And so by principle, if you say that building is most important to me, building, what does that mean? In relationships, it means building together, which means progressing. In a career, it means staying with that career so you can mature in that career, become a master of what you do. So in a nuclearpreneur mindset, the concept, it's staying together. You can't build anything if you split apart. So emotions drive us apart more than anything else. Feelings drive us apart more than anything else. I always talk about the grass is always greener as a mindset with a lot of us out here. We're always looking for better. Well, in the nuclearpreneur mindset, the grass is not always greener, because you got equity in what you're trying to build with who you're trying to build with. So as a starting point, the nucleus is learning how to stay with a good plan.
Well, I like what you just said about the grass is always greener. We don't realize that when you do have a marriage or you have a committed relationship, the grass may just need to be watered. Like our grass is brown, weeds are growing, right? So of course, when you don't tend to your own grass, the neighbor's grass that's tended, that's green and flourishing in the same season, presumably, you just look outside, you don't know what the neighbor dealing with. You don't know that they just had a weed season and a, you know, brown grass season. So you look at that and you say, we discount what we already have. And the principle of staying together, there's a list, I suspect, that you have a list of principles that, okay.
Yeah, we're going down.
Yeah, so, and the grass is greener concept. You're good at painting these pictures. I was telling you this morning how you're really good at painting these analogies. So the grass is always greener concept, not until recently did I realize I had a really great garden that just needed weeding. It needed watering, it needed maybe new seeds, maybe I'm planting tomatoes in a place where tomatoes don't thrive in Arizona. You know, it doesn't, you know what I mean? There's really good analogies here that you can use in describing what those principles are, and how do we even adhere to those, and how do we make those become part of it's the principle over emotions. What would be the first?
So again, it's a mindset. It's a mindset to stay with the program. So typically when we meet people on looks, that we figure out there's some things that we like about them. It could be their personality, it could be their drive, it could be how they make us feel, it could be their sense of humor. I'm saying, as a part of this, like I'm 51 years old, so is she. So we're not in a young courting, family building phase of our lives, right? We're in the dissemination of information phase of our lives. So for young people that come into this concept, it would mean that the likability that we both know when we were 20 years old, when we were considering marrying somebody, we like physical attributes and other things in common, and that was our deciding factors on if we're going to continue with the relationship. What I'm advocating is, as a part of that conversation, you also talk about building qualities, or building something, and you look at the person and see if they have building qualities. What I mean by that is, you can build a career as two people separate, like you can meet somebody and their career is over here, they want to do something, and you want to do something, but also consider building something together as well. As a part of your glue, like all the other things you like about them, also find a common business that you guys can grow together, so that when you have children, those children can grow up in that business. So by principle, when you're mating with somebody, figure out if you can build with them, not just family, but also business together. And what that will do is that's going to help you not start looking outside for something better, because now you have a different driver. You got the likability and all the stuff that we use to move forward with somebody, but now you have a driver of legacy, like passing something along to your children. That's not just, good old sayings and, good old habits and all this kind of stuff. Now you're trying to pass along a business which is foreign again to the Black community. We're first generation wealth in this generation now. We got to change that so it becomes more of a common thing versus an anomaly. What are you gonna say?
So I want to go back. You said something here that this is, I think, the core. You talk about likability. We talked about looks and, in your 20s, again, coming from a 51-year-old perspective, looking back at my 20-year-old self, he had to be this tall, there's a checklist of things that are visual drivers, right? Because you're 20, right? Likability, like is an emotion too. It's how you feel about this person. And I believe what you're introducing and what we're introducing is, yes, let's acknowledge that that's real. Okay, you're still 20. So dare I say, some people are in their 30s still operating in this visual feeling perspective. But what we're challenging each other to do at every age is to include a character list. You said this person can have this career over here, this person can have this career over here, but what are the driving characteristics? What kind of career? I know people that aren't Scam Likely keeps calling me. But I know people that have a career, but they're not upwardly mobile, which is a telltale sign of a core characteristic. Can be, what are character tellers? Who's a hard worker versus who's just doing enough to get by. It's these, if I'm the hard worker and this is a hard to barely getting by person, can we build? So instead of forcing a square peg into a round hole, the round hole is he's this tall, he's like this, sex is great, so, oh yeah, this is gonna work. And then the character traits are the square peg, what matters. This is what builds, right? The square, you can't put it in there. So, but we try and we force it and we push it and we try and we try.
Yeah.
We overlook so quickly character. So character shows up in what people do behind closed doors, how people behave over an extended period of time in certain areas. I mean, how do we know we can build with somebody if somebody's always flighty and changing jobs every 6 months? Or what are the telltale signs? And why is character so important as a principle in building nuclearpreneurship, right? So we know the end game, but how do we get 20-year-olds to understand there's a character list and a character telling habits that exist at 20, that you can know what somebody's about already? You know, number one, I believe you have to give the relationship time to mature. It's okay to be engaged in a physical, visual, feeling place, but when we make decisions out of there, life-changing decisions, I don't think we put enough weight on how important our choices are at 20.
Let's go back to okay. So what groups do what we want to do here? What groups actually pull this thing off?
Well,
where the young people farm into this concept?
We talk about, I was born and raised in the Mormon church, Latter-day Saints, Mormons, okay. Growing up in Hawaii, there's two religions, Catholicism and Mormons. That's it, that's the top two, right? So in the Mormon community, right when you reach 18, the men are already being cultivated to serve on missions. They are instructed, trained, and ingrained to come back ready to marry. That's at age 20.
And
the girls are getting prepared through Relief Society. There's training on being a wife and a mom, like right away at that age.
Do Mormons go off and work for somebody for the rest of their careers? Or do they end up in leadership, owner type of economics?
Well, far and wide, they do most of the ones I know, and as a principle in the church, is to cultivate your own.
Yeah.
You know, they build business. Not all of them. So careers are worthy and all of that. We're not discounting that.
But they farm in. They're like if they end up at the CEOs of organizations, people that's coming in, it's going to be people that they vet through their Mormon church and family, etc.
Yeah. Right? So they are principled.
Yeah, like Danny Ainge, who was he was a Boston Celtic legend. He was an exec for 20 years. He's a Mormon. He left Boston Celtics to go over to Utah Jazz, which is like a headquarters for Mormons. That's their headquarters, put it like that. And by and large, he's farmed up a lot of Mormons through the Celtics organization because he's a Mormon. So they pull each other up. So I'm advocating very, very similar, is that we look at it the same way. So the way their children come up out of high school into adulthood is through a mentality that is disseminated through their parents, who gets it through the church and their communities, et cetera, et cetera. So it can be an outside job.
Right.
Like no 20-year-olds in the Black community who's never heard of these concepts is going to buy in. It has to be a holistic community thing, like a covering. It's got to make it where young people understand how important it is. It's got to be one of those things where they buy in, but a lot of times they don't do it because they bought into alternative ways of being adults, which is, you know, dating around, going out for self, you know, not looking for a husband or wife in high school, college. So we have to change as older people that's going to be mentoring these younger people as they come out of high school. It's too late to let them do it on their own and just shoot information through social media. It's got to be a buy-in from Generation X, who's lived their lives, who are not going to start reproducing. But we can also use these concepts to come together if we're single, to find somebody we can build with as well, and go on this mission to start spreading this information that we build better together, and we have to start now in order to change the paradigm in the Black community. But Mormons do it exceptionally well. They're religious, but their culture and their religion runs like this. They're Christians, but it runs together, okay? Where I see the Black community, there's Christians, and as our culture runs that way, counter to Christians. And I'll break that down more, but basically, Mormons are known as people whose culture rides close to their religion, our culture runs closer to, fashion and rap music in general. You get what I'm saying? We have a different way, which I say is more of a non-structured way of lifestyle, almost emotional, right? Versus structure and principle. We run over here, and even in the church, the black churches, they're all different. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find two black churches that are similar other than collecting money, you know? Anyway, you get my point. You can go to Mormon churches and they're all gonna be the same. Same doctrine, according to the Vita. You won't be able to tell the difference if you go to a Mormon church in Charlotte or you go to one in Utah. But black churches, it's all gonna be different. Pastors gonna be different. Their mission's gonna be different. They're gonna have a different interpretation of the same scripture. I think what it's done is it's gotten us totally to where we don't trust the black church and we trust doing it our way. That's why now a lot of young people have adopted a spiritual connection or relationship that they pursue versus a religious connection because they don't see that as being closely tied to the way that they should live.
Well, we didn't have the benefit, the black community, of growing up cohesive, like as an institution, as a race, if you will. You know, we were already spread out and fragmented as part of our history being here. You know,
Okay.
families separated at birth, literally, kids getting sold this way and this one over here.
Playing out that way.
The Mormon community is multi-generational. You know, the chances that that family is going to produce future Mormons is very high. My family, I mean, we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations of Mormons in my family alone. Now, not everybody in my family is Mormon, but by and large, the majority of my family are in that line, okay? So in the Mormon community, it's multi-generational. The pressure to stay in exists. If you veer out, you have to be ready to like be ostracized from your families, okay? So we didn't have that. So now we don't have the advantage of multiple generations to pull us back together in this principled way. So to bridge that gap or to cheat time, I like that you say that. So we don't have multiple generations of time. I believe that our first challenge is Gen X, because we're aware now, this is our generation. Gen X, there has to be a acceptance, maybe, that it might not happen for me. You know, that maybe, you know, I'm 0 for 2, okay, and maybe I'm already, I don't subscribe to the Mormon program, you know, not anymore, but it's ingrained in me. I can't get rid of it, but I'm 0 for 2, this nuclear concept. I can go one of two ways. I can advocate for the nuclearpreneurship, knowing that I would need to accept, it may not be for me. So to set aside my own feeling, I believe you mentioned it a little bit earlier about we are Gen X in the black community, we're still chasing for us because we didn't have it. So now that whole 50 is the new 30 and you know, we're doing that as if we discount our age and our experience and all of that because we're still chasing what we didn't have. So then our kids, we think, oh yeah, don't do it the way I did. So yes, go to college and go get your bag and go. We're getting away from the nuclear family concept. So one challenge we have is that this generation needs to reconcile and adopt this principle, understand it may not be for me. So how do
but it can be.
I know, but I'm just, one of the things is I always will have hope. I do believe it's for me.
But the extraction of it is the betterment of the whole community.
And
the
that's
mindset
to set
is
aside
the black
self.
community as a whole is the goal. The goal is for the black community to be better. I mean, we got to leave this thing. A lot of people want to get involved. They want to do better for the black community. If you go to any barbershop, hair salon, you ask the question, what's wrong with the black community? There's going to be common answers. And they all want it to be better. So better is leaving it better than we found it or what we grew up in. So we got to stop being opinionated about our own experiences and sharing that with our young people and giving them fear about relationships. A lot of us are broken and we're just giving the bad shit. Men ain't shit, women ain't shit, get your bag, get your career, dude, da 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 da. And it's really just fucking up our young people. When they come out the gate, when I call it gate, high school is the end of the gate, right? After they graduate and throw the caps in the air, they out here. A lot of them are leaving the gate fucked up because of the fears that's been instilled in them from their parents' experiences. Imagine living somebody else's horror. And that's what we're doing. So we have to clean the slate. And our part, it may be little, it may be just sharing with one young person in your entire life, saying, hey, believe in building together. Find you a good spouse, date, be cool, be friends, then gravitate towards building and staying, okay?
And that
It's
community starts at home.
Yeah, totally.
It's at home. We're having babies at,
Well, it could be workplace, it could be
but
anywhere.
But again, and you say that so quickly, and we're so quick to discount. We talked about the grass is greener earlier. Community starts in the home. So to create home, this is what we're advocating, to create this nucleus. And even in my 0 for 2 home, I am building a nuclear mindset nuclear family mindset with my daughter, with my kids. I may not have the example of it, the visual and all of that, which is part of the learning. But now it starts at the house, because when she leaves the gate, now she's going to impact community. Then my job is to continue giving into the communities I was called to serve. So a lot of times we abandon our households, and I did this. I'm speaking from total experience, that I wanted to change the world out there when my home was all fucked up. Inside here was all hammers, and so I went out here advocating these principles. I didn't call it this and gluing it like this, but you know what I'm saying? So now I'm saying, let's not overlook our own 4 walls where we go sleep and wake up.
No.
That when we start there, and it starts in here with me.
It starts on the inside.
It really starts
where it
with me.
The buy-in has to be to set the mind right.
Yes.
Instead of most of us, when we're impassioned by something, and relationships get a lot of people impassioned. You know what I'm saying? Especially those who have had a bad, especially those who've had a bad course when it comes to relationships. They speak from that first because that's all they got. It's kind of like a default, right? I'm triggered to talk about relationships, so they come out the gate with, I've had bad experiences. So we got to change ourselves on the inside to say, before I speak around young people who I can influence, whether it be in the house or outside the house, let me set what's right. I always live by do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And that may exclude my own experiences about it. You know what I'm saying? And so you just gotta say that what's better for the whole is the road I'm gonna go down. And that's a reprogramming of our minds. That's gonna take a little bit of work. And so you talked about the core, and I say the nucleus is principles versus feelings. But feelings is what drives us to speak on something the way we do. We gotta pull those feelings back and say, this is what's best. Feelings may make us want to discipline our kid physically, when we really need to correct the action by having a conversation, understand why they did what they did, and that may be enough without the actual whipping, which may not even correct it. It'll make you feel better because you got on them, but it may not correct the actual action.
I want to give an example here real fast. I was in traffic yesterday, and as I'm sitting in traffic, it's back to back, okay? And right next to me is a black woman, cussing out a kid who cannot be older than 9, 10. He's sitting in the front, they're late going to school, and she is going off on this kid about, so, I mean, I could hear her. Her windows are down, and we're in back-to-back traffic, so imagine, here's how close the car is. And she is cussing him out for flooding her iCloud account with saving too much files and deleting some of her files, and she's cussing him out. So this is your point about we want to wring his neck, you know. You and the emotion is that, and we do this because we're so frustrated and unresolved in here on every level that has nothing to do with the iCloud file, has nothing to do with this little 9-year-old kid. What does he know about, you know, and it was going to cost her X dollars to do whatever. And how much dollars is that for iCloud? 99 cents for 5 terabytes of whatever. But
true,
but this is your point, is now being unresolved. Now she just poured into this. He couldn't have been older than 10. Small little kid sitting in the front seat, by the way, and she's yelling at him, and he's just looking forward, just not even looking at her. He's just sitting there taking it. And what they take, we don't know. We don't know. He's taking this in, and we're not going to know the impact of those words and that immaturity and that emotional outburst, because we didn't, like you said, just reset, reel it in. And what is the real issue? The issue wasn't the 99 cents or the, you know, those things. It's like, I need to teach him. It was a teachable moment that goes further than you. I mean, she was cussing him out, like full-fledged, and other cars, because she was making progress. We all did this, you know, because she was so loud. So the point is reeling in our emotions and understanding this emotions versus principle, this vision of the future nuclearpreneurship really starts with here, you know, because everything births from here. When we can, this is what I can control. You know what I can control? This right here.
Right.
I can. And it does take work. It takes time, it takes work. But beyond that, it takes commitment, commitment to the thing.
Totally. So I'm an advocate of, like, every time I've done things emotional, gotten angry, let's just use anger. When I'm to the point of angry, nothing happens good. So I would advocate that we create our own principles in our life, because you know that if something's gonna make you mad, and you set a principle in place of how to deal with something like that, then if the control is there, the favorable outcome is going to be there. Versus having these things around you that's going to trigger you to be like her, you know what I'm saying? So you got to set it up. You got to set your life up to where you live by principles and areas that are sticking points for you. In particular, like being around certain individuals that's going to trigger you to be totally out of your mind and out of control. You got to start managing that so that all your outcomes are more predictable versus unfavorable and have you in these bad situations. And so we're advocating that we be thoughtful about our experiences, put them somewhere so that we're not triggered to come out talking about them in a way where people start carrying our own traumas relationship-wise, particularly young people, because young people, believe it or not, they may not listen now, but they listen later. Like I listen now, things that were told to me when I was a teen. I listen to that stuff now. It's funny how it works out. You know what I'm saying? Like, so in other words, we take it all in.
Yes.
We may not use it. It may fly into our ears, into our brains, but it's all stored there somewhere. And so if the kids are being exposed to all this negative shit, you may say, don't worry about that. I was just angry. It's in there. It's already collecting in there. And the more of that stuff they collect, the more whatever they collect, it starts to form their behavior in life. They start to default to that stuff. So if you have bad relationship etiquette, then your kids are more likely to have bad relationship etiquette. Mormons have great relationship etiquette because they stay married and they work together and they identify roles. Nothing wrong with that. I don't know why that's a problem in the Black community. I don't know why we got a problem with roles.
Well, before we move to that, I gotta say this in your example. I read a meme today that my really good friend Glenna shared online. Thank you, Glenna. It said, toxic information, emotion, energy doesn't belong inside the body. That we need to find ways to exit it from the body. So you talked about creating atmosphere, creating an environment around you where you don't put yourself in triggered environments. I will go a step further and say, yes, do that. And in that distance, work on getting that toxic trigger out. So through creative outlets, the meme went on to say, do it through art, through music, through dancing, get it out. However it needs to exit the body, toxic emotions don't belong here. It doesn't belong in here. What happens is it's death. So it was a cool little thing that, framed in this. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna post it and share it because it really spoke to me, because that's what we tend to do is we hold it inside here. So that mom example yelling at the kid, she's held on to toxic stuff that happened to her that triggered her to then take this out on the kid. Had nothing to do with the kid. It was there before the kid. So you can distance, you can avoid, I call it too. You can live on a 40-acre farm 3 hours outside of town and avoid people. That is not healing it, because that it's still going to trigger. So distancing yourself away from community, it's counterintuitive to what you're advocating here. So in the distance though, which is smart, work on that. So to that meme's point, get it out, express it somehow. I know that when I was going through my freedom season, I danced hula, worked out, and played ukulele for like a whole year. I found my happy places before I even read this meme, letting it out so that it didn't have to trigger me. So I can be set up in circumstances and situations because I want to be around people. So we need people to move further. All of our purpose, all of our mission, God called us to do that, and I believe that. So I cannot distance from them forever, but there is a time to separate and then work on those things. But I like that that meme. Yeah.
So there's a thing called compartmentalizing, and that's a great tool, and that's really what is going to be a part of the list of how we're going to disseminate the nuclearpreneur concept. Compartmentalizing just means that you can have an emotion and have a feeling, but you operate over here without any fragments of that emotion you're dealing with being impacted by the work you're doing over here. It's something we need to really master. Everybody, not just Black community, but people need to learn how to, everyone should have to experience your stuff because you have an emotion. And because we are very emotional people, I think generally speaking in the Black community, we have certain sensitivities because of what we've been through. You know what I'm saying? We've been through a lot, and there's gonna be content coming out, literature, screenplays will come out of, that's gonna be birthed out of this concept to really get it out there visually. But it's going to tell how we got here. It's important for us to know how we got here so we can figure out how to get to the next level. But compartmentalizing is really a management of emotions, and that helps you to be productive outside of what you're going through. It helps you to communicate in an effective, unbiased way, no matter what you're going through, to protect those that you're communicating with from your own stuff while you work on your own stuff. And some of the stuff that Davita's saying as far as how she dealt with her trauma is what you got to do, and you got to figure out what that is for you. It may be working out, it may be music, it may be art, which is a great outlet. Really an underspoken outlet for dealing with trauma is art, writing, painting, etc. But to learn how to compartmentalize is the first step in controlling your emotions, and it also contributes you to be a better person at taking accountability. Because if your life is in turmoil over and over and over again, that's not everybody else's problem. That is a you problem. And so compartmentalizing helps you to receive the emotions for a moment, then you can start to think clearer.
I like that tangible tool. That's a practice,
Oh,
So
it's
now
totally
that's
practice.
homework.
Yeah.
And the homework
Totally.
in compartmentalizing, and in, again, from speaking from my own experience, was to pause while having this emotion. I would pause and write it down. You just write it down. In my season of being completely devastated, the most I could muster was going to the gym, and when I was having whatever feelings I was having, okay, that caused tears, anger, whatever that emotion, I'll write it down real fast and understand, okay, what is this? What's causing this? And in fact, it has become a habit now. What am I feeling about this? And I literally do this. I sit here and I go like that. Okay, what am I feeling? And I just try to ask myself, okay, what is this? Why do I feel some kind of way? And that's a common term right now. Like, I'm feeling some kind of way. Why? And it's not the person. So instead of lashing out at the person, especially with my daughter, she's 14, she drives me wild. So I have to pause and say, why am I being driven wild right now? What about this is driving me wild? And I have to go back, and this practice has really served me well, because I used to be quick to anger. I was so impatient. I would say everything on my mind. I was that lady, sitting in the car next to me, like, for real. So now I'm not. So then you sit there and you're like, okay, what is this? What am I feeling right now? And to your point, compartmentalizing is a real tool. So you can isolate, which is related to compartmentalize, isolate that thing, contain it before it runs amok, right? And what do you think? Pull you off your square, which I love that terminology too. That my purpose is depending on me compartmentalizing, isolating my emotion, putting it in a place and identifying it and releasing it so that my purpose can happen, stay on my square. And how do I do it? So that was one of the things I did, was in the moment, write it down and then sit with it. And I did a live on this in COVID about answer yourself. Don't just identify it and then move on. Answer your damn self. Why am I like this? Why did I do this? And don't move on from that place and that identification until you answer your damn self. Answer yourself. And I remember during that live, people saying like, oh my God, they ask, how come I do that? And then they just move on from it, So
Yeah.
I like that compartmentalize. It's a great tool. However you need to isolate that emotion, identifying your why, identifying your the non-emotional goals, like these things over here.
Yeah.
That's where principle becomes ingrained, and principles become principles, I feel. That's more important than lashing out at my 5-year-old. That's more important than lashing out at my spouse.
Got
right?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
good.
principle, and what should be embedded in your principles, number one should really be other people. Other people takes you out of the me mode. Other people, be mindful of other people. And other people could be wrong too. But as a general way of thinking, what's better for others? And I always use this. I had a friend who talked about falling into depression. And I said, what is depression? I had two people actually talked about depression with me. And I'm not the right person to talk about depression with. Because depression just means that you're thinking about you. Suicide is you. It's totally you focused. You can't kill yourself if you're thinking about helping other people. And what I mean by principles and talking about other people, I'm talking about being concerned and how do you help other people? How are you in service? You can't be in service and depressed. You can be, but then something's wrong with that. That's off somewhere. You can't shoot yourself in the head and be concerned about helping other people. You can, but there's something wrong with that if you're able to do it. You see what I'm saying? So principles just says, let me move me aside and think about the whole, my family, my children. People are getting divorced thinking that their kids are better off with just one of them. There's something wrong with that. That to me is like suicide. You're doing what's best for you. which allows you to do that because you're not thinking about the whole. You see what I'm saying? So principles just say stay in the lane where what's best for other people, their edification, their health, their safety, their abilities to go out in life and do well. That's a principle. And that moves aside the whole me. I think the whole mental health thing is a good thing. I think therapy is needed, particularly when you grow up in impoverished neighborhoods and you've had trials, whether it be rape or beatings, etc. You gotta clean that shit out the system. I think at some point we gotta say, okay, I'm graduating from that so I can get out here and into the real world, absence of all these internal, what's going on with me? Why am I feeling this way? You see what I'm saying? I think I said this in our last video, I think we overcalibrate the how do I feel, because then our feelings drive our decisions. You can't have principles and be so in tune with your feelings all the time, because it excludes others around us. And this is why I feel like a lot of us don't think of all of us as human beings, because it's all about us and fuck you, fuck y'all, fuck everybody when it comes to me. And as a Black society, we can't get into a nuclearpreneur mindset, concept, buy-in unless we start thinking about everybody as a collective and what's better for the collective. I love Malcolm X because he didn't care about him. He knew he was going to die. He was only 30-ish, 20, whatever. And he was asked to interview the white people. He said, I don't worry about me. I know I'm gonna have a short life. You can't be about you and still do the work knowing you're gonna die. You see what I'm saying? And this is a young man. Ali, same way. Ali was 19, said, fuck y'all, I ain't going over there to Vietnam War. Fuck out of here. I'll just go to jail. Why? Because you ain't gonna have me, who's been oppressed, go kill innocent people. That ain't my war. I ain't going. And we know about Martin Luther King. There's been many others who said, fuck me, I know my life is in danger. You think they was killing niggas now, imagine back then. Imagine back then. We had no billionaires in the 60s, no millionaires in the 60s.
Yeah.
We barely had motherfuckers making $75,000. We had no clout. Our culture was trash. They didn't give a fuck about our music, what we were saying, our swag. None of that shit existed. We had nothing. We're only 11% of the population. We had no numbers, no power, no money, no nothing. And these men said, I don't give a fuck. It's about Black people. And we got to get back to that. That's our problem. We're too busy in all the minutia and our feelings, and we can't think of others. And like I said before, Black people, we should be our best friends, our best advocates, because we've all been oppressed. Ancestor-wise, generation-wise, we've all been oppressed.
And no one's oppression is better than or worse than another's. It's all oppression.
Yeah.
You know, I've been engaged in conversation where people try to make their oppression worse than yours, and it's that. So let's just even the playing field and acknowledge and accept we've all been oppressed, and it's all worthy of acknowledgement, and it's also all worthy of let's through that come together. You know, we
totally. I've heard my daughter say about Roe versus Wade. She goes, you know, it should be a woman's right to choose because all the stuff women been through. She was 13 at the time. Where you get that from, right? You get that from women who buy into it's okay because you're a woman, you can do whatever you want, etc. I mean, that's fine, but my point is that she shouldn't have had that position at 13 years old, right? That was an opinion by an adult. That was an opinion that now she has to live with, and she's got no experience with it, or she don't understand all the surrounding circumstances, right? And a lot of our kids come out the gate with an opinion that we gave them without all the other surrounding circumstances that will give them a full understanding of what the whole problem is, right? And so nuclearpreneurship is thinking right because there's principles there that we can think of before there's an emotion evoked to get us off track. If that makes any sense.
That totally makes sense. This all makes sense, and I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great effort. It really is. I mean,
very worthy
if
cause.
I could say this, and I'm taking this from Martin Luther King. If I had a dream, we would start to get together in high school, college, and we would stay together as Black people. And we wouldn't abort our babies, and we would build our communities, and we'd take all of our money and throw it back in. And we would give each other grace and be loyal to each other. And if we get off track and we betray each other, we'll go to us man to man, woman to woman, man to woman, and talk about it. And not spread propaganda about each other.
Yes.
We'll stop fucking around this versus this person, this beef shit, this rap beef, this beef, who's better here, who's better there. We'll get off all that shit and say it doesn't fucking matter. We got Black people out here doing well. Let's just edify the art, the artists, what they're doing, encourage them, and stop taking sides.
Yeah, I like that.
So,
It's good. Okay. Well, we have homework. Compartmentalizing.
compartmentalizing.
Share in the comments your effort in compartmentalizing. We all go through it. As long as I'm human, I'm gonna battle my emotions versus my purpose versus staying on my square. It happens in big ways, little ways. So share in the comments what you found to work in compartmentalizing emotions and the success that you've had and the challenges that you've had in overcoming those things. Share with us, because we like to know what progress we're all making. We're gonna share as well. I'm gonna find that meme. I want to post that meme, because it really was like, wow, we do need a toxic exit from our body to get those things. Don't carry it anymore, and understand, dig it out from the root. Just take it out and go deep, deep, deep. Get it out of there. And it does take time. It takes effort. But I believe, number one, it takes commitment to a better thing. I believe that what we're advocating and saying is nuclearpreneurship is just better. That's all.
And I'll say this too in closing as well. You know, you got to start somewhere with change. It's not something that just comes. Like, we're doing a little work, the creative work, the stuff you can't see. And we've been having these conversations for a long time. And now we're willing to start to share it. This is a long journey, and I'm here for it. And I can see in the next 15 years, by the next 15 years, this concept can be a household name. And that's why we're doing this. We're not doing this for any other reason than to see a monumental seismic change in the Black community where it's all love, it's all coming in peace. And we can stop allowing outside forces that want us to continue to lose. We can get them out of our sphere. And now we have the money, we have the resources. We understand how wealth is built in this country. There's no unturned stones now. We get it all. And not only that, we understand we have direct access with God. We can go straight to Him. We ain't got to go to pastor and see if he's on point. You know what I'm saying? We can literally have a relationship with God to where we can understand at a whole different level. So this is our starting point. But we're going to continue to show up, push this effort, and for whoever hears these messages, just be mindful of the end goal and just let this circulate inside of your mind. You know, we're advocating just building better together, the Black community, staying together, to build equity, to build legacy, to have something to hand off when we leave this world. We can't do it if we're stuck on the inside of our emotions. We have to think about what's better. We gotta want to see people see each other do better. So I end it right there.
Good.
All right, so
Till next time.
till next time, peace.